So this video is going to be about one of my complaints about the weather this year, specifically how the summer is wound up turning out. Now, you know me, I do like the April weather the best, even though most people like May to June weather the best. I like April weather the best. And I want to talk about some things that were quite upsetting to me. Specifically, May is supposed to be my second favorite weather month of the year, and why May this year just wasn't it for me. So, typically, about right before and after the winter are known as the strongest transition months. And that's when the worst cold fronts can come down. As the summer air moderates, that's why even as storms have become more active, they're like not as big temperature drops. And my video is going to be about me complaining about the weather across across the month of May and where my complaints really come in. And why, in its own special way, I think that the first day of May might have had the best weather. In its own special way, of course. I need to zoom in so that this gets blurred. Okay. So, the first day of May had a high of 64 and a low of 40. If I were to show you April's weather, which I actually will pull up quickly, you'll see that this is actually very similar to the last couple days of the month of April. But, this is the coldest that it would get in a month by far. If you pull up the last few days of April, you can see clearly how April 27th is a high of 58 and a low of 41, then 58.40, 64.40, and 66.44. And I want to make a note of that while that sounds normal for the time, in May, even a temperature of 64 is still very cold for the month, because this next day brings forth a permanent warm front. The rain keeps the high 55, but the low jumps up 10 degrees. The next day is a high 59 and a low 49, so the mean temperature continues to increase. It goes from 52 degrees to 52.5 degrees, and now it's at 54 degrees. The next day will jump up further to 50 degrees to a 62 degree mean before it goes down. So as you can see throughout May, even though it's not really consistent, the first 5 days of May all warm up from each other in some way. And I want to make a note that a lot of people still thought May 4th was a dreary day because of the low of 50 when it coincided with a typical May shower. But it brought forth a warm front, so the high of 66 was recorded at 6 o'clock p.m. So you did have some nice spring days. These days were overshadowed by rain, making them miserable. This is the last day with a high below 60, and this is the last low in the 40s of the entire year. Because what wound up happening was that this would wind up bringing forth a warm front, and the humidity would very quickly rise after this. You can see plainly that high of 60 degrees does come in at 11 o'clock. Dog size putting a low at 50 because they're annoying as usual. And then pretty much immediately the rain comes in, which causes that temperature to drop like a rock all the way down to midnight when it gets down to here. The morning low actually isn't too bad because it doesn't get colder than 54 degrees. The next day starts out in the 50s, but quickly tumbles to the 40s. So you have your high at like 5 o'clock in the morning of 51 degrees. And the temperature plummets the whole day down to 46. And AccuWeather puts it down to 45. So this is May 8th's temperature graph. Again, the clouds really keep the temperature down. Now this day is when the sunshine comes back beaming in full force. Dark side is actually putting the low down as low as 43 degrees. That high of 69 still comes in. And notice how the dew points are quite low. and they get a lot lower throughout the day. So by midnight, the dew point is down to 9 degrees, but because the air temperature is 53 at that time, you still are having this effect of very low humidity. This happened in the beginning of the month too, and it does happen in the beginning of the month too, where the humidity would wind up getting very, very low. The humidity drop clearly occurred on the 8th because the dew point began at 35 degrees, mainly because while it was raining, of course, the dew point had to be close to the air temperature, which was in the mid-40s. The humidity gets even lower into May 10th before it gradually rises. Notice how dark sky is giving us a wind chill, unlike AccuWeather, as dark sky is recording it to have gotten down to a low 49, even though the hourly temperature graph does only show it getting down to 50 degrees. This wind chill effect happened from 4 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, and this would be our last wind chill of the entire spring, which is something I want to talk to you about, how early this happened. This very rarely happens in May. A lot of time this actually happens in June, but this June we only got down to 54 degrees. That's even lower than last June, sad 51 degrees. Normally it does get down to the upper 40s in the beginning of June, and this year it completely failed to do so. The UV hit an extreme level of 8 today, an extreme level of 8. This is the first time it hit that since April, and I don't even know how the hell it managed to do that in April. Notice the dew point's rising. The dew point starts out as 9 degrees, but by about 12:15 in the morning, it gets to 10. The dew point rises throughout the day, but doesn't get above freezing and then falls again. But May 11th, something very interesting happens with the dew point. So according to AccuWeather, the low is 50 degrees on May 10th, 45 on May 9th as well. Now according to dark sky, this has a low of 52 and a high of 74. AccuWeather saying a high of 76 and a low of 53. The dew point starts out at 16, but quickly rises, plowing all the way up to 55 degrees. And it really stays at that the rest of the day once it gets up there. That dew point climb is steep, and we would really never see dew points that low again because the air would begin to humidify. The dew point starts out in the mid-50s and winds up getting into the low 60s on May 13th. When the low is 56 and the high is 73. Past these points, these days would get very humid, but as the low temperatures do still wind up getting down to the 50s, the air would have to dry up a little bit at night. So there was some relief at night from the humidity, and in some ways, this felt like the beginning of summer. Because even though the air temperatures don't indicate summer, really, I mean, 76 degrees is not, I would not consider this to be summer-like weather. The humidity definitely made it feel very intense. The next day, the dew points begin in the upper 50s, and they wind up rising to a high point of 66 degrees. Even amidst the clouds, the temperatures still manage to get into the mid-70s, which is something that is not normal. Also, notice how the high temperatures are getting closer and closer to midnight. That happened on this day when the low was 59, high was 72, but pretty much the entire day was spent in the 60s, if not even in the 70s. Dew points yet again rising up to 66 degrees. Rain comes in at night. May 15th, again, with its high of 74 and low of 56, dark sky saying 57, 75. Again, another not great weather day. The dew point drops, but then still rises again to, yet again, 66 degrees. May 16th, though, finally marks the end of this pattern. a low of 59 and a high of 71. And a lot of people were still wearing pants, I guess, because they didn't buy the shorts yet. That makes sense because it was humid but not hot, and it's just not well forecast. But finally, though, the dew point drops. Actually doesn't. That happens on May 17th. The air temperature is deceiving you as the warmest day of summer, but it wasn't the most summer-like. The high was 78 and the low was 55, but what happens with the dew point, dogs are saying a high of 77. What happens with the dew point is that it falls. It falls to the 40s, and it falls to 40. Even though the air temp at that time is still 60 degrees. The next day would be would not be as warm as they forecast, but this is the lowest the dew point gets at about 2 o'clock. When the air temp is 69, the humidity is 35%, allowing a 40-degree dew point. But that dew point did not get into the 30s, and they wanted to make a special note of that. The next day, rain comes in. This has the low of 54 and a high of 64. So again, remember how I told you that May 1st day, even on a high, was still considered cold? Well, it was. Because this storm comes in, and what happens after is pretty interesting. Because the high is hit about in the evening time. But again, notice all that happening. Notice what's going on. And the high every single day would be warmer than this. Though not necessarily the low. Because the next day it gets 51 degrees. You'd almost certainly think that this day would not be a very humid one, but it is. Because all the dew point can drop to is 50 degrees. The humidity, when a low of 51 was reached, was nearly maxed out. So even in terms of, the air couldn't have cooled anymore. The air would then get a lot more humid throughout the day, as dew points would peak at 64 during the day, even when the air temperature was also 64. So this day, despite having a high at 11, it was a wavy temperature that led to summer. Now, dark sky and AccuWeather agree on a low of 60, but AccuWeather is saying a high of 90, dark sky only 88. But I want you to watch what happens to the dew points. Dew points get to levels never before seen to a 71-degree dew point. And with an air temp of 87, which is probably even higher according to AccuWeather, it's like you didn't really have summer at all, and in the first day, it feels like a summer heat wave is going on. That is not normal. Your first day of summer normally does not feel like you're in a full-on heat wave. It's like summer had appeared in full force, and the dew point would cool off, but not that much. Because the next day, with its low of 65 and high of 86, which both dogside and AccuWeather agree on, the dew point would get down to 63, rise up to 72 degrees. So that heat index gets into the low 90s yet again. It's like another day of full-on summer, and the dew point would stay at 68. May 23rd, both dogside and AccuWeather agree on this. The dew point starts out at 68. It does wind up absolutely plummeting to 49 degrees of a dew point. But that low temperature is still in the 60s. And having dew points in the 40s was something that didn't really happen last year during the summer. Once it happened on June 23rd, it didn't really happen again until, I believe, September 25th, I want to say. It didn't really happen last summer. But this summer felt a lot more comfortable, except during the absolutely unbearable heat waves. And there were more unbearable heat waves this year than last year. But besides that, this year, it really felt a lot more comfortable during the summer. You didn't really have those days with insane heat and humidity as one might expect. And even when it did, they were more so isolated. Again, that's how it was before the brutal heat waves of July and August came in. I heard that in New York City they had a heat wave from July 12th to 14th, one from the 19th to 24th, and then one from August 6th to 9th. What made the 6th to 9th one crazy, that would have been August 2nd to 9th, except August 3rd and 5th had highs of 89 degrees, so it missed out on a singular degree on being a heat wave. you know. But the summer of 2022 did not begin in the kindest way, because it really was nothing at all, not even anything vaguely summer-like. And then all of a sudden, it's full-on summer. Very aggressive. So, yeah. By the way, if you want to check out the dew point on some cool days in June, just to show you why it wasn't in the 40s, we can. Actually, this stays in the greatest example, because even though it got down to 56 degrees, the high point at Dockside was 76, accurate saying 73, and I think I showed you that before. I mean, the dew point does get low, but then it rises back up to 60 degrees. I think June 5th is the day with the low dew point. Dockside saying 55 to 77, accurate says 54 to 76. So you have this weather day ahead of you. But notice on this day, the dew point does get down a lot, but at absolute lowest here at 10 o'clock a.m. with an air temp of 67, the dew point only gets down to 43 degrees. So it's still like, not very low. Now, notice how this is 56 to 80, accurate saying 56 to 78. The humidity is actually rising throughout the day. This happens the next day. Okay, dogs are saying a high of 75, accurate to 76 is a high. Notice how the dew point starts out in the 50s and then pretty much immediately gets in the 60s. I mean, it did feel fall-like because of the winds and the clouds and whatnot, which kept the UV down to 5, but that humidity, it like starkly rises throughout the day. And then you have yet another day of full-on summer. I didn't show you the 93-degree day either, but this was a day that felt like a full-on summer. Except that thankfully when a high temperature of 84 was hit, the dew point did crest into 61. So like the 1 hour without a heat index. I'm actually going to go into this in a little bit more detail in a future video, because the weather this week was pretty crazy. Okay, after a very hot and humid day of 4, the dew point starts out at 59, and then it goes wee down the drain, but only to 46 this day. I could actually make a video of dew point highs and lows, and that would actually be pretty interesting. This is the 19th. I think this is when the dew point gets to its absolute lowest point. Note that the accurate weather does put the high at 75, and the dew point gets down to a low of 41. And this does coincide with the low temperature of 55, just before anyone makes any annoying comments. So yeah, no dew points in the 50s past them. We would get dew points getting very close, but yeah.